We live in a sex-saturated society. Everywhere we look, we seem to see sex, and the impact it makes on people, including our young children, is really important in our society. We see pornography and the impact of that, especially on the internet, where it's easily accessible to everyone, has made incredible inroads into what people see as good and right. We also see the importance of sexualisation of children. In television ads, in ads on billboards, we see children exploited using sex to sell. And of course, advertisers know that sex sells, that's why they use it. We also see the growing use of prostitution. In WA, for instance, the government is currently considering the legalisation of brothels. And today we're going to talk about prostitution, about Schoolies Week and marriage. And you might ask, are they all linked? And yes, they are. And the common theme here is the issue of sex. In Western Australia, the government is planning to legalise brothels, mainly to put them into residential areas. But of course we know that as we legalise such things, people begin to think that they are right, that they are morally good, because the government says so. In Victoria, we found that once the government legalised brothels, there's been a huge increase in the number of brothels in the state. There were about 50 illegal brothels prior to legalisation. Now there are an estimated 100 legal brothels, many of them quite large, as well as up to 400 illegal brothels. As well as that, we have registered street workers and girls working in their own homes, and the increase of that has been enormous over that time. It also hasn't taken away the criminal aspect of the industry. We still have people on charges for trafficking, bringing girls in from Asian countries to work in basically sex slavery conditions. So it really doesn't remove the criminal aspect. In Western Australia, we have Linda Watson, who used to be a prostitute, who's come away from that industry and now helps girls to get out of the industry themselves. Recently, Linda wrote this, and I'll read it because it's important. She says, in some ways, the phone calls are the worst. You see, because she's speaking out against prostitution, those involved in the industry are harassing her, and she's had physical attacks against the home that she lives in. But she says the phone calls are worst. Since the prostitution bill was introduced on the 3rd of November, I've been getting harassing phone calls at all hours of the day and night. She also warns us, these crims who have been breaking the law for so many years are not suddenly going to sprout halos if the law changes. And she urges the government not to legalise prostitution, because it really does exploit both women and men. Then we consider the issue of schoolies. That's the time of the year when school leavers go interstate to celebrate the end of year and the end of school. However, often young people get caught up with drinking, with drugs and sexual experimentation. Just last weekend, the Queensland government on the Gold Coast reported that they had arrested 52 young people for drink-related offences. They also arrested a suspected drug trafficker and had found drugs in some apartments on the Gold Coast. The problem with this is that young people often go away thinking that they can do as they like. And the reason is often that they get taught that at school. You can do what you like, just do it safely. And in fact, I've got here a page from a Victorian government youth website called Youth Central. And the page on sex talks about Schoolies Week. It does start with a few paragraphs on Are You Ready? And that it's up to you to decide whether you want to have sex. But the rest of the 2 pages actually give details on how to have safe sex, how to make sure you're on contraception, how to get emergency contraception if you have sex but you think you're not ready for it, all about sexually transmitted infections. And of course they used to be called sexually transmitted diseases, but now it's the word infection because it doesn't sound quite so bad, does it? And so this paper gives lots of information to young people, really not encouraging them to be pure or moral. And of course that's what the Bible teaches us to do. Part of the problem, of course, is that many churches aren't actually addressing the issue. They don't teach what's right and proper for young people in a biblical morality sense. And so they're often attracted by the ways of the world to think they can do as they like. And so it's really important that Christians actually address these issues with our young people. And of course it all comes down to the question of marriage, and that's the place that the Bible says is the best place for proper relationship between men and women. In fact, the Bible says that's the only place for sexual activity. And of course, marriage itself is under threat in our nation of Australia today. In just 2 weeks, the Australian Labor Party conference will consider the question of homosexual marriage, extending the marriage laws to allow 2 men or 2 women to marry. And of course, it won't stop there, because there are other groups, bisexuals for instance, and Muslims who would actually like to extend that further than 1 man and 1 woman, or even 2 men or 2 women. They'd like to see it broadened. So if you change the boundary of what society, tradition, and the Bible has said for hundreds of years, then where do you go? So the important thing is that if you want to restore and protect marriage in this country, now is the time to act. Contact your Labor Party MPs, attend the Stand Up for Marriage rally in Sydney on the 3rd of December, and there's a whole range of other things you can do. So check out our website for information, sign up to our emails, get our journal to stay informed, to help you make a difference in our nation.